deposed Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro is due to appear in court in New York this Monday after being seized by U.S. forces over the weekend. Maduro and his wife, who was captured with him, are accused of running a narco-terrorist regime, a claim the leftist strongman who was in power for 12 years denies. The vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, has taken over as interim leader of Venezuela. Our Solange Mougin takes a closer look.
From the Venezuelan presidential palace to a Brooklyn federal jail. From the realm of a special military operation to waiting and fighting what is likely to be years of prosecution. After being taken by U.S. forces, Nicolas Maduro and his wife are being held here in New York's Metropolitan Detention Center. But what comes next? Well, first, there's the arraignment, or the initial hearing, at the Daniel Patrick Moynihan Courthouse in Lower Manhattan. It's in this same Chinatown courthouse where former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez was tried and convicted. Arraignments are generally quite short. Presiding Judge Alvin Hellerstein will hear Maduro and his wife's pleas, and it's during this first hearing that prosecutors of the U.S. Southern District of New York summarize their arguments and the charges, ones that were released on Saturday. In a detailed 25-page indictment, the Venezuelan president has been charged with narco-terrorism and conspiracy to import cocaine, along with ordering kidnappings and murders in drug trafficking operations. His wife is accused of accepting bribes and meeting with a large-scale drug trafficker. For this former drug enforcement officer, there's evidence that Maduro oversaw a state-sponsored cocaine network.
I believe the evidence is going to show he was enriching himself. It was much more than just looking the other way. There was direct involvement.
But defense lawyers are likely to argue that Maduro's arrest and his removal from Venezuela were illegal. His lawyers may also state that he should benefit from sovereign immunity. For Maduro and his wife, the legal battle to not spend the rest of their lives in jail has begun. And for government prosecutors, they'll be fighting to justify the U.S.'s intervention in Venezuela and the capture and guilt of its leader.
We're going to talk more about this now with Elvira Dominguez-Redondo, a professor of international law at Kingston University in the UK. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. So what are your thoughts? What can we expect from Maduro's hearing today?
Thank you very much for inviting me. I am not sure what will happen in the hearings today, but my understanding from what I can read and hear is that the United States is going to claim they can prosecute this Maduro, who is theoretically still was the president of an independent state. The lawyers of Maduro will probably, as you said before, claim they have sovereign immunity, which will be backed up by international law as it stands today. But I imagine one of the main arguments is going to be that Maduro has never been, or was not never, but he's not currently recognized as a legitimate president in Venezuela, and therefore he has no immunity.
What about the involvement of the U.S. in Venezuela? What legal right did the U.S. have to go in and seize Maduro like it did?
He has no right whatsoever. I mean, it is this sovereignty that President Trump so much wants to protect means that the states cannot interfere in the business of another states in general. There are exceptions to this. One of them is violations of human rights, which have happened in Venezuela for a long time. And this is not an argument that has been used in any way. There's no arguments claiming that this is trying to protect the population of Venezuela in any form or in any shape or form, but only to protect the United States. There's no argument in international law to use armed force to kill people, not only during the seizure of Maduro, but all the votes before, and about 100 people, over 100 people that have been extrajudicially executed before this to put pressure on Maduro. There's no legal basis at all. This is just a breach of international law, and a very serious one on the prohibition of the use of armed force and the prohibition definitely of abducting people from another country, particularly of abducting someone who represents that country.
So given if this is a breach of international law, as you said, what kind of sanctions could the U.S. face, if any, and where would they come from?
This is going to be very complicated. First of all, the only organ in international law that can impose sanctions that are binding, that all states have to follow, is the United Nations Security Council. And this, as we know, has 5 permanent members. One of them is the United States, and therefore it is impossible to activate those global sanctions against these 5 permanent members because they have a right to veto. It is, as it stands, impossible to sanction the United States globally. It is possible that a specific state tries to stand up to the US administration. So far, the responses from other countries have been mixed, sometimes very weak, particularly from the European Union leaders and from other veto power states, particularly China. But whatever they do, they cannot. The United Nations Security Council was not designed to allow sanctions against the 5 permanent members.
So given all of that, what kind of precedent could this set globally? Do you see these kinds of things becoming more common?
I don't know. And I hear other commentators speaking about China taking over Taiwan or Russia feeling free. I think that danger is gone. I mean, other major powers, the UK, France, and Russia, have already violated the rules of the Security Council. What I see is that there's no legitimacy at all now from countries like the US, who in a way have tried and is still saying that they are going to fix Venezuela. They have tried to model the behavior of others. It is impossible to have any legitimacy for other countries. So the vast majority, we have 193 state members in the United Nations. So only 5 have veto power. The vast majority of the states have accepted this privilege. But this privilege was theoretically coming with the burden of respecting the rules. And I don't see how the other 100 and almost 90 countries are going to respect any of these rules now. Where the legitimacy of this is coming from now.
Elvira Dominguez-Redondo, thanks so much for taking the time to speak to us. You're a professor of international law at Kingston University. Thank you.
Thank you.